Alright, so last time we took a look at some of the basics of how to link up a style sheet to a page. We're going to leave that aside for this one and actually go about it in a little bit of a different direction. We're going to take a look at the site, the early version of the site for the class, www time. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to use Firebug and a little bit about how to play with the way the CSS works, and a lot about how to link up our rules to what shows up on the page. A couple of you have asked why use Firebug at all when you can just look at the source. Well, hopefully this will help to answer that. Let's take a look at Firebug for this page. Now this gives us the CSS, so we can look at the CSS, or it gives us the HTML, so we can look at the HTML in pieces. Frankly, that's something you can do in source. It's a little easier here because you can fold the HTML and look at only particular elements. So you can say, you know, here's the body, and the body has a page element, and inside the page element there's a div for the header, a div for the content, a div for the sidebar. I'll make this very, very small. So here's the div for the already we're seeing the usefulness of Firebug. Here's the body highlighted. Here's the div for the page highlighted. Here's the div for the header, for the content, for the sidebar, for the footer. So you get an idea. You can actually roll over pieces of the elements and see where they are on the page. Perhaps even more importantly, we can make use of the inspector to hit something on the page and see where it shows up in the HTML. So I've hit this button right here, which is the inspector, and then I can hit here, and it says that is controlled by this line right here. It's also an H1 tag, and it shows us where that is, and that's inside the div header image, and that's inside this whole big div, which is a header. More importantly, in some ways, by clicking on that, we see what parts of the style sheet apply to this. And so there's only one style sheet on this site, which is good. And on many complicated sites, you can have a dozen or several dozen style sheets. In this particular case, we only have one style sheet, style.css. And on line 126, there's a declaration that applies to this particular element. It says anytime you have an H1 or an H1 with an A in it, which is what we have here, or an H1 with an A with a hover in it, which means anytime you're hovering over it, it becomes that. You should do this. You should color it white, and you should have no text decoration. Now, one of the nice things about Firebug is we can, on the fly, see what happens if we messed with this a bit. So I can click on that and hit the down arrow to get the next option here, and change it to white smoke. Not much happens there. I can change it to yellow. And what we've done is we've changed it to yellow. Now, note that we haven't done anything on the server. This is just the way it's being displayed on our browser, but it gives us a chance to tweak things a bit. I think that's a really bad choice, but we can stay with it if we want. And what about text decoration? Well, there's none right now. What if we did underlined? That's actually not a bad idea. Since this is a link, it really ought to be underlined. This one isn't a link, though, and you really shouldn't underline things that aren't linked. Why is this showing up with the same things? Because it's also, if you look at what this part is, you'll see it's not here, but it's right down here. And since all of this is stuff that's part of header image, it's applying to that as well. And we don't want to apply to that. So we don't want it to be underlined. We could make it none or underlined. Overline, I hate overline. You do see it on the web once in a while, or line through. I think blink is the choice. We want it to be yellow and blinking. Don't ever do that. Either yellow or blinking, for that matter. I think none is probably a pretty good choice here. Why is it not just the H1 that's affecting it, or just the A? Because you inherit things from each step outside of it. So it's like if I had a house rule, and the house rule was, when you're in my house, you should not wear shoes. Now that's nice, but my apartment has a rule that says no shoes, no shirt, no service. So the rules inside my house supersede the ones of my apartment building. The rules of New York City are that you have to wear cool shoes. Now, inside my apartment, you don't wear any. Inside my building, it doesn't say anything about cool shoes, so you would inherit that property. That is, you know, because you have the cool shoe property and New York in general, you inherit in the apartment building. But you don't inherit I forgot what I said was the rules. Oh, no shoes, no shirt, no service rules of my apartment. So as you move outward in concentric circles, those things, if you don't say anything to block it, they kind of soak down to your level. So anything that applies to the body will apply to this, because it's kind of wrapped around it, and kind of the word is inherits. It kind of comes down to the more and more local. How do we decide what font face, what typeface to use here? Well, we haven't declared it here as the H1 here, as the header image. We don't have a declaration there. But somewhere here on line 99, we've declared, and on line 94 in the file, we've declared both declarations about any H1s, H2s, and H3s that appear on the page, and we've done some declarations on the H1 in particular. So for any on line 94, we say any H1, H2, H3, any H1, H2, H3 should be displayed in this font family with this font weight. And then a couple of lines later, in line 99, you say, oh, and if it's H1, in addition, it should be this size, and it should be text align centered. So again, we can switch these. We could make it justified, we could make it left or right, but center is a good thing for a title. We could also change the size. We could make it smaller. We could make it very small. We could make it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We could make it fairly large. Well, we'll stick with 4 for now. And we could change the font families and the bold. Note that in these I've been going up and down, and Firebug lets you do that. I should touch on, for a moment here, how you measure the size of a font. Now, I am only going to tell you about 2. One is M, which is basically telling you how many times a normal default font size you want. So 4M means make it about 4 times as big as the default in this area. You could also say 400%. These are the best ways of doing this. There are other measurements. In fact, there's lots of options. CSS always gives you lots of options. We could make them, for example, 2 inches high. The problem with that, besides it being way too big, 1 inch high, the problem with that is that an inch is different depending on what the screen is. If I'm looking, this is actually, I don't know that I have a ruler. I might. Let me see real quick. I do, actually. Just curious. Actually, that is dead on an inch, so maybe I'm lying. But generally speaking, it's not a good idea to use inches, or for that matter, centimeters, which you can use. I definitely don't recommend it. There's 2 that you really ought to be using when you're talking about font size. At least for most of the page, you want to be using M and percentage. And you can go out and read about why these are a good idea. I'm not going to go into the details for now. I'm just going to say, do that, and you'll be safe. If I turn this off, it's still there, but if I refresh it, it disappears. Firebug's great for tweaking things, but it makes nothing permanent. It's just a way of playing with the site. What it means is you can play with any site. You can pull up CNN, you can pull up Google, and you can change the way Google looks by messing with its style sheet. But it doesn't stay that way. You don't have any way to affect what's up on the server. There's 2 ways to do that. Well, there's lots of ways to do that, but the normal way we've done that is editing a text document and then uploading it. We'll do that again in a minute. This happens to be WordPress backed, so I don't have to do that in this case. I can still download the style.css and then upload it again. But I also can go into Appearance and click on Editor, and you'll see that it comes up with a bunch of files I can edit, and the first one by default it shows up with is style CSS. So I can actually go in and just edit the style here. So for example, if I decided that I found this is line 96, you'll remember from the other side, and line 99, this looks the same. Remember font family with the whole list of fonts, font weight, here's, it's reversed, but here's the font size and the text line. So for example, if I thought it was a little bit overbearing, I could maybe knock it down to 3Ms. So right now it looks like this, but if I take this file, change that to 3Ms, and then I go down here and save it, update file, and I go back and take a look and I refresh it, you'll see that it's made it a little smaller. So using WordPress and lots of content management systems, it's much easier to kind of make those changes on the fly. Not all of them can do that, but many of them can. And in general, it's easy to kind of change the way a site looks by simply changing the CSS.